All right, so for more on this now, we cross live to SABC News correspondent Sherwin Bryce-Pease in New York for us. Sherwin, thank you so much for your time. So what's the latest on Ambassador Rasool's status in the US and his likely date of departure?
Well, according to the letter issued to Ambassador Rasool by the U.S. State Department, which was subsequent to that tweet from Marco Rubio late on Friday, that essentially laid out the pathway in terms of his expulsion here. That letter says that Ebrahim Rasool Bongiwe will lose his diplomatic immunity in his capacity as the head of mission of the South African Embassy to Washington, D.C. today, Monday 17th. Let me just read from that letter. The Department of State will no longer recognize Ambassador Rasool as a member of the South African mission as of Monday, March 17th, which is today, at which point his privileges and immunities will cease. He and his dependent, that's a reference to Rosita Shabodin, his wife, are required to depart the United States no later than March 21st, which ironically is a Human Rights Day in South Africa, which is Friday this week. I then reached out to the Deputy Chief of Mission at the Embassy in Washington this morning, and he has confirmed to me that Ebrahim Rasool has not departed the country yet. He said that he's going to be leaving by the March 21st deadline, but that the logistics around that have not yet been confirmed. Essentially, his flight to South Africa has not been confirmed. I've seen some reportage out of South Africa that the ambassador is already on his way to South Africa. Certainly from our side, from our reporting, that is not the case. The ambassador has not departed, but will do so by that March 21st deadline. And Bongiwe, what a full circle, a controversially full circle moment here, given that this ambassador has only been essentially in office for the last 3 months. He presented his credentials to former President Joe Biden on the 13th of January, essentially a week before Donald Trump was sworn in as the 47th President of the United States. And it was on January 14th, which we had our first formal discussion with Ambassador Rasool in his new capacity. And it's worth recalling what he said to me that day. Let's play the tape.
This is probably going to be one of the most difficult assignments that I've had to accept on behalf of South Africa. The first time I came here, it was under President Obama. It was a language of solidarity. I think coming back now with President Trump, there's lots of uncertainty, but I do think that the interests of South Africa remain abiding. And we're going to have to pursue those interests, like our economic interests, like our socio-political interests. But I think we're doing it under enormously changed circumstances. So I would be lying if I did not admit to some nervousness about the assignment that awaits me.
And just how prescient those comments were on January 14th. To quote him, this is probably going to be one of the most difficult assignments that I have had to accept on behalf of South Africa, and how true those words are as we sit here in hindsight and look back. And also worth remembering that this will not be unfamiliar territory to Ambassador Rasool. As you well recall, Bongiwe, he was Premier of the Western Cape until the ANC recalled him in July of 2008 when the ANC was being led by former President Jacob Zuma.
And you think about the fact that right now, Sherwin, there's a lot of uncertainty even still about quite a lot of things as far as the U.S. is concerned. But one wonders, though, what has been some of the reaction to this decision, particularly in the United States?
Well, one of the first reactive points we noticed was from the chair of the Foreign Relations Committee, Senator Jim Risch, the Republican from the state of Idaho, responding to Marco Rubio's public revelation that Ebrahim Rasool was no longer regarded as persona non grata in the United States. He tweeted that I applaud Secretary Rubio for calling out the South African ambassador's disgraceful anti-American hate speech, going as far as calling the ambassador's remarks to the Mapungubwe Institute as hate speech. Might be a bit of a stretch there. Suffice to say that he is not cut out for diplomacy. There's also been some public endorsement of Ambassador and support for Ambassador Rasool. An organization, an American Muslim national public affairs organization called the Muslim Public Affairs Council, wrote the following on social media. Ambassador Ebrahim Rasool is a principled leader who fought alongside Nelson Mandela against apartheid and has dedicated his career to diplomacy, interfaith cooperation and justice. Baseless attacks like this only serve to divide. We stand by him in his lifelong commitment to building a more just and inclusive world. Patrick Gaspard, a name that will be familiar to you, Bongiwe, the former U.S. ambassador to South Africa under the Obama administration. The U.S.-South Africa relationship has now reached its lowest point. There's too much at stake to not work towards the repair of this relationship. And I think those sentiments have been expressed by South Africa's President Cyril Ramaphosa in that clip we played at the beginning of this. Patrick Gaspard goes further. We should note that Marco Rubio himself said far worse things about Donald Trump in the past than anything said by Ambassador Rasool. Let's be real about what these people are up to, given their obsessive targeting of South Africa and their performance of grievance. So very direct criticism of the Trump administration's actions here by a former top diplomat under the Obama administration.
And Sherwin, given those remarks, right, by Patrick Gaspard, especially because there are some who do share those sentiments that the relationship between the United States and South Africa has reached an all-time low, and we've seen that calibrated response from Durko, from the president himself. How does this play out in the days and weeks ahead?
Well, you know, behind the headlines, one really has to take a step back, Bongiwe, and ask ourselves what was going on at the time, right? Rasool was not just talking to the Mapungubwe Institute, although the focus of developments now has, sort of borne out of what he said there. What else was he doing, right? This was about, he was working to repair this relationship. There was an executive order that was being implemented against South Africa with a number of accusations leveled at South Africa, be that its foreign policy in relation to its case against Israel at the International Court of Justice, its relationship with Iran, whether truthful or not in terms of how it was expressed in that executive order. And there was work being done. We understand there was direct engagement with the White House. They were ironing out the details of what the give and takes were going to be in terms of the relationship regarding the posture towards Israel as it related to perhaps a recalibrated bilateral trade agreement if, as we read the tea leaves, that South Africa might not be included in the African Growth and Opportunity Act going forward. But there are also questions about whether the African Growth and Opportunity Act will in itself exist moving forward, given the transactional nature of how this president is engaging, whether you're allies or enemies with, countries in terms of a future relationship with the United States. And what we understand is that there were very detailed specifics as it related to South Africa's foreign policy postures, as it related to relationships with certain countries who, are very much in the news today without getting too specific in terms of future trade deals and where we could find positions of consensus moving forward. So there were very detailed discussions. It's incumbent now on the South African government to really think about who is going to replace Rasool here. They really do not have time to waste, right? Time is of the essence here, given just how long it even took for Rasool to present his credentials to the Biden administration. So that work has to continue. Who will be leading that work remains to be seen. And of course, that will lead to hopefully a direct relationship between President Trump and President Ramaphosa in terms of finalizing what Rasool himself was leading here, in terms of ironing out where we could go in terms of the relationship here. Someone has to take the lead now. Who that person is, I don't know. But also, the envoys that we've been hearing about need to be appointed so that we can really understand who's going to lead the ship moving forward.
Interesting times ahead. Sherwin, thank you so much for that. That's my colleague, SABC News correspondent, Sherwin Bryce-Pease.